Attack on Titan is a show that had everything going for it. Complex and likable characters, amazing storylines, and years of build-up and anticipation for the climax of the series. And then, the final chapter dropped.
My disappointment is immense.
But for today, let's pretend that chapter 138 and 139 was never released. What would happen if Eren Yeager was able to achieve his goal of wiping out humanity and completing the rumbling? In the year 854, over the course of 4 days, Eren's rumbling brought about the complete destruction of the nations around the world, in which 80% of all human life on the planet was erased. The rumbling was stopped prematurely, but if it didn't, how would the ending of Attack on Titan be changed? Well, the first few changes that would occur are the execution of Eren's reasoning as to why he decided to kill everyone. This is all connected to his own words in chapter 133, as Eren suggests that peace and freedom are often at odds with each other. When people have the freedom to pursue their desires, conflict is likely to arise, as those desires may clash with each other. To ensure lasting peace, it is necessary to take away the power of those with oppressing desires to fulfill them, which is a form of oppression. Eren realized this and acknowledges that he is robbing the rest of the world of their freedom in order to achieve his vision of peace. And remember, he admitted in chapter 121 he has no problem in doing so, as he has always been this way since birth. However, of course, this comes at the cost of oppressing the others, which is necessary for ensuring the unchallenged freedom for his people. As a result, Eren grants peace and freedom to his loved ones at the expense of the rest of the world, but he allows them the right to challenge his freedom and fight back in chapter 133. He believes that fighting is a natural consequence of freedom and encourages it. That's why Eren states he will not leave the future of Paradise to fate. On the other hand, there may be a way out, as Kiyomi suggests, by respecting others as life forms equally worthy of both peace and freedom, rather than viewing them only in terms of what one can gain or lose from them. But it's not like Eren didn't know the humanity of his victims, as he saved Ramsay and Halil, even crying for them, saying he's sorry for what's to come. He still made his decision to pursue his vision of peace at all costs, and ignored Armin, Mikasa and all his friends' pleas in chapter 133, where they asked to come to a non-aggression pact and admitting that they were wrong. Now, as a result of Eren surviving and completing the rumbling, Ymir Fritz's entire story arc would change in the last 2 chapters. Therefore, the ending would be drastically different in the implication of her character. Instead of clinging to her love for King Fritz, she would instead be pursuing freedom just like Eren was. In chapter 139, it is stated that Ymir needed to relive her past through Mikasa to achieve a different result, where she would force Mikasa to kill Eren to move past her oppression. On the other hand, if Ymir was in the pursuit of freedom, this would not be necessary, as the motif of her freeing the pigs from the walls would continue on, aligning with the multiple plot devices such as Eren's desire to end the oppression of the Eldians, that Ymir is the mother of all. In chapter 122, Eren was able to use the founding titan by freeing Ymir's chains in the paths. Thus, she did not require to follow Zeke's royal blood anymore. This would fix another plot hole regarding why Ymir stopped clinging onto life by dying to a spear, and another plot inconsistency regarding Zeke's death being able to stop the rumbling from continuing, as his blood no longer had any ties to it. When both Zeke and Eren were commanding her, she obeyed and went with Eren. The royal blood restrictions vanished. On top of that, we were told that the healing factor of the Titans is linked to the will to live. So how did Ymir lose the will to live if she actually loved King Fritz and her children, as she stated in the original chapter 139? Instead, if the narrative was set up for Eren to complete the rumbling and survive, in chapter 139, Ymir would lose the will to live because she was fed up with a tyrant but was a small child brainwashed and afraid. So she couldn't let go of the chains until Eren came and freed her by understanding her heart. This is highlighted when Eren says Ymir was waiting for him this entire time, and she isn't a god nor a slave, just a human that was born into the world, which means Ymir has a right to freedom just like any other human, according to Eren's ideological beliefs. With this shift in the story, Eren would no longer have to die by Mikasa's hands for Ymir to free the world from her curse and destroy all titans, as her desire has shifted from reliving her love to actually pursuing freedom for her progeny. How, you may ask? By being reborn into a world of peace. This shift in the story with the complete rumbling would require an explanation of what scenery Eren saw, as we still don't know what he was able to show his father Grisha in convincing him to give up and pass on the powers to Eren in the first place, allowing the events to occur. Furthermore, the revelation of Ymir's desire for freedom will parallel the idea of Eren's free will as an Eldian, allowing him to break the wheel of the world had created, such as the theme of getting children out of the forest and stop sending them to war, or forcing children to eat their own parents, yada yada yada. This would be revealed via Eren being the father of Historia's baby, who would be the reincarnation of Ymir Fritz. However, for this, Eren doesn't necessarily have to be the baby daddy, but regardless, he would know Ymir's desire, instead of stating in chapter 139 that he doesn't know the depths of her heart and only Ymir knows. On the contrary, Eren would be fulfilling Ymir's desire to create a world without a curse or titans, something that has been his lifelong dream all along, thus adding another reason why he initiated the rumbling. As a result, the events would link to the scenery Eren had shown his father, breaking the 2,000-year cycle of generational suffering. But why would Historia want a baby in the first place? And how does it link to Eren? Well, if Eren was planning to win by doing the full rumbling, Historia's baby would be the reincarnation of Ymir. This is because Armin states in chapter 137 that Ymir has gathered all the Eldians because she wants something from them. Therefore, Historia having a baby would make even more sense if Eren was planning to complete the rumbling, as Historia's life was in danger, in which Eren stated he would never sacrifice Historia no matter the outcome. Now, you're probably struggling to remember what danger Historia was in, right? Well, for Zeke's 50-year euthanization plan to work, Historia needed to keep birthing royal-blooded babies who would inherit a titan. Thus, the founding titan holder could keep controlling the rumbling, ensuring that nobody from the outside world attacks Paradis. But since the officials were not trusting of Zeke and would have him fed to Historia instead, since she was part of Paradis, to prevent this from happening, Historia had to get pregnant, since the baby would die if Historia was turned into a titan. We know that Eren is working with his brother Zeke as a facade to fulfill his own master plan. In order to complete the rumbling, Eren needed his brother alive to execute his sterilization plan. Zeke is under the impression that Eren has changed his ways and is now working with him. If he were to die, then Eren's plan to betray him would have failed, and he wouldn't be able to destroy the curse of Ymir and fulfill her desire. All this leads to Historia's pregnancy being orchestrated by Eren to fulfill his goal. In chapter 130, Historia asked his opinion about her having a child. Yelena said that the pregnancy was a blessing, implying that it had to be beneficial for the Yeagerist. Therefore, the final chapter would have to be changed to make sense of Historia's lie about the due date of her child. She lied to Levi and all the others. This would be because Eren wouldn't be suspect and can complete his full rumbling that he had told her about, as Historia's labor conveniently falls at the day of the rumbling. Instead of it being a few months until labor December like she stated to Levi. It was only a few short days. As a result of Eren surviving and completing the full rumbling, it directly opposes Zeke's ideology, as he believes all Eldians should not be born out of his own hatred for his existence, whereas Eren believes that everyone born into this world is special and should be free from birth to do what they desire as a pro-natalist. This would connect back to Eren stating to his brother that he isn't as pathetic as him in chapter 121. Furthermore, if Eren completed the rumbling, chapter 139 would need to include the remainder of Eren and Historia's conversation from chapter 130, as it was cut short if you can remember. Historia states to Eren that since they defended and saved her back in chapter 66, it was enough for her and she's content with this happening. Eren explains that might be fine for her, but it isn't fine for him. He tells Historia about his plan for the full-scale rumbling. Eren explains that Historia's sacrifice of becoming a Titan isn't necessary, since he plans to go through with a rumbling, making it unnecessary for her to have children to inherit the Titan powers, because there would be no outside threats. In this what-if scenario, at the end of chapter 139, Historia would be labeled as the worst girl in the world, whilst Eren has been labeled the worst boy in the world. The most evil act was required to finally end the world's misery. No one else would take on these roles. Historia would most likely name her baby Ymir in honor of her dead best friend whom she loved of the same name. And since in the original chapter 138, Isayama showcased another path in which Mikasa answers Eren's question in chapter 125 much differently, instead loving her and dying by the curse, which would bring no results. Everyone dies on the island as the nations immediately invade shortly after if they end up together. Therefore, Eren would know of this by being in the paths and having access to all memories, thus understanding that there was only one option and role for him to play for everything to work out in his favor. As a result of Eren having survived and completing the rumbling, chapter 139 would also highlight the proof that indicates that the two were in direct communication in the past. For example, remember when Pixies mentioned to Yelena that Eren has been taking a lot of unauthorized actions lately? Floch somehow got assigned to her god, and her lodgings were located only a few kilometers away from Eren's home. On top of that, it was foreshadowed that Eren has the Warhammer Titan power at his disposal, where he can bury underground, making it possible to contact Historia with secret information of the leaders that got leaked. We then get to know that Eren used these two characters to relay his plan for what he actually desires. All this happened 10 months ago, and who would have guessed that the Japanese consider a pregnancy to last 10 months due to the way they calculate their trimesters. On top of that, in chapter 122, we see a short flashback of Historia talking about Ymir Fritz, paralleling her own story. Historia states that she thinks Ymir is girlish and says that she likes her because she's so kind and always thinks of others, thus making sense to why Ymir in the paths would choose the worst girl and worst boy in her progeny to free her, as similarly she was falsely labeled the devil of earth in all of the history books whilst being oppressed, where all Eldians were called island devils by all nations. Now this brings the video to the fun part. Imagine a world where Eren wins. Well, he would easily survive due to having all access to Titan powers, and more importantly, it would mean Paradise no longer has any outside threats. So how would the ending change? After the rumbling, Eren will have a breakdown over all those he has killed and witnessing the destruction he has caused. After grieving, Ymir would show herself to Eren before reincarnating into Historia's child to truly live. This will bring the story full circle with chapter 1's title of To You 2000 Years From Now, where Ymir's dream is fulfilled that Eren foresaw. With her will being fulfilled, the world of paths would bend to Eren's will, with him being the last Titan shifter. The power of the founder would allow allow Eren to remove the curse of Ymir. And just like he did in chapter 124, Eren will then strip the Titan power from all Eldians, removing the potential of it to be used by anyone else in the future. However, to ensure that his corpse is not eaten like Ymir, being who she is, she will make sure Eren's remains are properly disposed of, therefore killing the ancient organism that caused all of this with him. Whilst alive, he visits the graves of his old friends, reminiscing on the time he spent with them all. However, for the first time post-rumbling, Eren will be able to smile upon seeing Historia's child, knowing that the next generation would not suffer like the past 2000 years. The deaths he caused created a better future. Eldians across the island, with the remaining Yeagerists, focus on creating an efficient government, and since there is no outside threat, the Yeagerists don't need to focus on military, but rather helping one another. Overall, the world will be left with the Eldians and Eren's descendants. Historia will continue her role as queen and create governance of the nation as the people rebuild their lives and construct the cities without walls. After an era of peace, the outcome would not be too different from what we saw in chapter 139 and its extra pages, where we learn that war breaks out once again centuries later. The island is destroyed and everyone dies. But in Eren's completion of the rumbling, future wars due to racism wouldn't exist. Rather, disputes would be due to infighting of views. Isayama stated he wanted to hurt his readers and initially wanted to create an ending much like what he experienced from playing the video game Love and the movie The Mist. In fact, in an interview, Isayama claims he was inspired so much from Love that Attack on Titan was borderline ripped from it. Both these endings entail a sad outcome, where the audience learns that the actions of the main character end up being foolish, as what they desired isn't possible or was avoidable due to them being naive. Similarly, with this motif, if Eren completes the rumbling and survives, either way there would be war in Paradise. This is due to the claim that a widespread rumbling would spark conflict amongst Paradise citizens. Shadis and his group stated this because some of them simply hold different opinions and will rebel when the time is right. Even the Browse family were against Eren's rumbling, for example. Furthermore, Kiyomi informs Flock of this, the biggest Yeageress of them all. She states, if you think Paradise is safe with this, you will just continue killing each other as usual. This idea is further insinuated by Isayama in the information of public disclosure, where it is stated, for as long as people hold firm to different beliefs, there will always be an enemy. Therefore, as a result of Eren's completed rumbling, it will only eventually cause a civil war in the island, especially since most likely Eren's wish to keep his friends safe and to live long happy lives would not be possible. Most of them would have died in their version of freedom, as they would try to take him on and fail. Armin, Levi and the others would not be around to become ambassadors to great peace, and since we know even in the original chapter 139 most of the island becomes Yeagerists who support Eren, it will cause conflict between other factions in the island who would feel Eren has become a dictator whom they have to fight against to gain back their freedom, just as he did against the entire world. With Isayama's vision of the story, it's clear that with the complete rumbling or not, no matter what, humanity will eventually fight against each other. The world is a mean and nasty place in which even a catastrophic event wouldn't stop humans from developing hate or prejudice for each other one way or another. This parallels the real world, in which there has been 2 world wars where 70 to 80 million people were killed. It doesn't stop the fact that World War III is still a possibility even today, because humans have never learned from history, nor do they want to when it comes to their ideological beliefs on fulfilling their desires or what their meaning of life is. Now, to enjoy more peak fiction, why not watch our video on Jujutsu Kaisen? Sukuna's true power has been revealed and he just may be able to beat Satoru Gojo.